Cześć, nazywam się Magda Bębenek i witam Was na kanale Wracamy do Natury. Mam dzisiaj dla Was rozmowę z doktorem Stephenem Terrellem, jednym z autorytetów i pionierów somatycznej pracy nad regulacją, nie tylko układu nerwowego, ale także wszelkich innych systemów, układów, tkanek, organów w naszym ciele. Steve jest moim nauczycielem i mentorem w modalności Transforming Touch, z której korzystam zarówno we własnej podróży do zdrowia, jak i w mojej pracy z innymi. Stworzył ją na kanwie dziesięcioleci doświadczeń w świecie traumy rozwojowej, wczesnodziecięcej i to właśnie na tym temacie się skupiamy. Omawiamy go zarówno z perspektywy klienta, jak i terapeuty, dzieci, nastolatków, dorosłych. Definiujemy kilka ważnych, podstawowych pojęć i omawiamy różnice między Transforming Touch a innymi modelami terapeutycznymi, również pracy somatycznej. Wspominamy o kluczowej roli osi PPN dla naszego zdrowia. Zaraz dowiecie się, czym rzeczona oś jest, a także rozmawiamy o tym, co jest najważniejsze w zapewnieniu zdrowego rozwoju dzieci. Sama jutro ruszam do Irlandii na ostatni moduł szkolenia ze Steve'em, a póki co zostawiam Was w jego wirtualnych rękach. Udanego seansu. Hello, Steve. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm very happy to have you here.
Thank you. It's a
And
pleasure.
for those that don't know you, so they're not happy yet, but I'm pretty sure they will be as they watch this video. Could you please tell us what it is that you do and specialize in the context of working with others?
Sure. Thank you. It's interesting when you think, what do you do? And then I have to think, oh, what do I do? And basically what I do is work in the field of developmental trauma, which is a field that was kind of ignored for long periods of time. But I started working many years ago, trained in some touch. I'm a psychotherapist, and I thought, oh, this touch stuff, I'm going to see what happens. It was when I was in somatic experiencing training in the advanced module that I'm at Kathy Kane, and I started learning some touch skills training. That led me to come back. I was working predominantly in a foster adopt population. I've always worked with adoptions. I have 2 adopted sons. I'm very familiar with developmental trauma, but I think I have to credit them because they really backed me up and had me look at developmental trauma over and over. And so I have a private practice. I started working with kids, and through that process of touch, I started just listening, going, oh, well, try this. And so I kept trying different things until I was able to bring about regulation. And I realized that through the teenager population, little kids, babies, I realized that what they were seeking wasn't a conversation usually. Sometimes they want to talk a lot, but it wasn't a conversation. It was more about healing, finding a way to heal. And through this work, I became aware that, oh yeah, this is a regulation focused modality that I've created called Transforming the Experience-Based Brain. That's the training, and it's transforming touch that we do. And being able to do transforming touch with people, we begin to heal their somatic wounds of early childhood. We begin to give them more of a window of tolerance as it begins to expand, and understanding about that window of tolerance, how the sympathetic nervous system rises, the parasympathetic meets it, and it regulates it, supposedly. But when we're in high stress, like developmental trauma or wars or work or whatever we want to call, whatever's bringing on that high stress, and we stay in it chronically, then we've caused our parasympathetic is wounded, and it has to have a crutch. And the crutch is we begin to develop behaviors that will help us feel safe and to lower our anxiety or to lower our stress. And those aren't always healthy. It can be anything from isolation to alcohol to drugs to chocolate candy. I mean, it can be a whole wide thing of things people are dipping into, and pulling it back to a place of realizing that pathology wasn't helping, trying to figure out where we were going never helped, and really trusting that the mystery of healing in our systems, really stepping back and going, okay, I trust that something greater can happen if I stay out of the way. My role in this work is to show up, be consistent, be regular, not to be wildly different. Each week when people see me, I'm pretty much the same person, and to create this whole safety, leaning back into early developmental work, coming in and looking at it and going, okay, we need a safe haven. We need a safe haven, meaning our offices have to be safe. They're not in the middle of a hallway with, no doors. They're in quieter areas with doors where they're comfortable. And we become that secure base, which, we know that we need to be safe all the time for our clients. And it's interesting to me that people show up in a different way when they're the therapist. When they're in that practitioner role, they don't show up the same way that they do when they're a client. And people sometimes think, oh, I'm going to be this way or this way, and maybe I shouldn't do this, but it really isn't that. It's about creating safety from a different place of being in the present and holding whatever comes up in front of us, being able to say, oh yeah, that's part of healing too. And teaching about suffering and grief and loss, because in developmental trauma, we're going to see a lot of grief and suffering and loss. And as we get better, we go through periods of being worse, which never made sense to me. Never. I still don't like that part. But I know it's reality that people start to get better and then they feel bad, then they get better, then they feel bad. And they begin to, yeah, back and forth, back and forth. It's not always easy. It's definitely not easy. The good part for practitioners is that they're also healing themselves all the time when they're working. So there's an advantage there, but I don't know why the suffering has to come with it, but it does, because everything that you ever got hurt with that you weren't able to express in your life is going to float to the surface. It's just going to move through your body.
Yeah, thank you. And oh yes, I've only been doing this type of work for about 2 years, but yes, the contraction and expansion and the contraction and expansion periods are real.
Yes.
It's no joke, and yes, it can be intense and painful and uncomfortable and all the things, and yet there's so much more kind of inner solidity and stability that seem to be coming in at the same time. So yeah, it can be a bit of a confusing dance between the two. Like, I'm okay, but I'm actually awful. Or, things are awful, but I'm actually okay. And not okay in a disconnected, dissociated state. Like, I know I'm feeling really intensely, and suffering right now. And yet I'm kind of okay with that. Like, it's not as scary anymore. I
Right.
guess is the big thing. Okay, so you've shared a couple of terms that I think might be really helpful to define. And so I would like you to start with early childhood and developmental trauma, if you could, and what the difference might be with shock trauma. So that's the type of trauma that maybe most of us would be familiar with.
When we think about developmental trauma, it's really anything that happens to us in childhood, in our teenage, up to about 18 or so. It's anything that interrupts our normal development and brings about a different reaction. Developmental trauma can be physical abuse, emotional abuse, could be just going to the doctor, a lot of medical reasons in the beginnings of our lives. Lots of different factors can play into that role, and still, because we're not a pathology focus, because developmental trauma, we don't have to completely focus on the pathology. There's plenty to work with, and so that early ruptures that occur that really begin to change the way we see the world, how we're being raised, how we're seeing the world and moving forward. There is no beginning in there, there is no end. It's kind of like it just is this. And it can happen in any time, several years before conception. We can go your parents, your grandparents, epigenetically wise, are going to have an effect coming down the line. And definitely anything that happens at conception or through the gestation period, all of those, we look at all of that and we just go, okay, this is where the rupture occurred. And when there's a rupture, we have to work extra hard. It costs us more to feel safe, because we're supposed to be the most important thing in the world when we're born. People are supposed to dote over us and keep us safe, feed us, change us, play with us, all those things. We're supposed to be narcissistic. It's not, this is the time of life where it starts. Usually it disappears around 3 or 4, but it really is. This world is all about me. And when we look at it that way and go, oh, this world is all about me, then anything, and not most of the time, but sometimes we have no idea what it is. Because of the epigenetic up the line piece, we know that it folds in, and anything epigenetically, we become at birth. It's not like we have this tag along. It's now us to work with. So again, more cost of doing business, where shock trauma has a beginning, an event, and an ending. And if we realize, oh, I have this, I was in a car wreck or a war or explosion or whatever happened, it could be loss of parent. I mean, there's lots of stuff that can cause it, shock trauma. But when we're looking at that shock trauma, it's going to change my day-to-day life. But I remember what life was like before the trauma. And so if I can get before it, I can get through it, I can get past it, I can move on, I can defensively respond to it, I can have all of this motion to it. There's lots I can do to bring about a sense of healing around shock trauma that we don't have around developmental trauma. It's like, I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. I don't know what today is going to bring for you. What I know is if we build more regulation, you're going to use less defensive accommodations, and you'll be able to show up better in your life. Those are the things we know. That's part, oh yeah, we know that. But getting to that place takes meeting someone in a place of regulation, meeting someone where they are, and just waiting with them and being that positive influence. So yeah, if I had my choice, I'd probably take shock if you got to choose. The other thing we know is that most folks who have shock trauma also have developmental, because it just means their system couldn't handle the big things. And that's usually a sign of developmental trauma.
The more I do this work, the more I kind of feel and see that there's regulation everywhere.
Yes.
And the more I realize how many elements of our culture, not just children, like child rearing, but an education, but basically anything and everything that we deem normal is actually a symptom of dysregulation individually and collectively. So in your experience in this kind of Western dominant culture, do you think there are actually a lot of people that have not experienced some degree of developmental trauma? Or would that be pretty difficult at this time?
It's not difficult at all. It is we kind of have periods of time in the world that seem to be more stressful. So we know that there's a lot of people going to be affected by developmental trauma. That's a given. Yes, I could be standing in the airport and or sitting and have nothing to do and start looking around. But actually, I'm just doing it out of curiosity. Like, I wonder what happened, or wonder what's going on here. Because we do mask so well, the ability to not show the true me is not that difficult. I mean, I could pull it off pretty quickly. And I could be a completely different person in the airport. Nobody's going to notice. I'm not going to do any behaviors that might draw attention. And kind of you fade into the woodwork, so to speak. They don't see you. They're not going to see you. And they don't want to see you. And that was the hardest part, understanding, a lot of my life I spent early on, people not wanting me around, not allowing me to be a part of the group, not inviting me to be, not wanting. And so when I look at that and I think about it, it's just an opportunity to wear more mask. The more you are in public, the more mask you can wear. And I find even if I'm as authentic as I can be in a training or somewhere, even that sometimes people are surprised. They're surprised. But I think the majority of us who work in this field have lived in this field. We've grown up in the field. We were planted in the field. Our seeds were in the field. And just realizing that, and then, being able to be with something extraordinary and not know why. It's like, why don't we know why? But we don't. Why does somebody's leg move this way? Or why does their body move this way? Or why is their head turning this way? People say, oh, why is this? Why is this? Why is this? People want us to tell them. But the truth is, we don't know. We don't really know. It's just a movement. It's just something. But it's something to note that as you heal, that movement will disappear. May get a new one, but that one's going to disappear. There may be another one after that. Just always be welcoming, really welcoming. Just acknowledge that, oh, there it is. Welcome, you're here. Stay with me. I'll keep us both safe. So there's lots of masks, lots of pretending, lots of I see a lot of activation, but I also see a lot of regulation. I saw when the war recently started in the Middle East, I saw regulation immediately in people. They were quieting down and they got their job done. They figured out what their job was and how to do it, and they just kind of did it. It's like, oh, so, they used to say the best person to ask to do something for you if you have a project is someone who has developmental trauma, because they'll know what to do. But
They'll have like 10 scenarios.
Yes, we don't want to do it though. It's like, oh, go pick somebody else, not me. So that's kind of a long way of putting it, but that's kind of how it works.
Yeah, and I totally understand you about the not knowing what it is, and yet having seen you twice in training and how you interact with people, it's what like so much. It's so amazing to see you just look at a person and you go like, oh, the hip or the foot or the something, and you don't really do much, but you notice it and to go in there. You might not know what's going to happen, but to go in there. And then through like doing something like this, suddenly something unravels that is so beautiful and powerful. So like I hear that, and at the same time it's just such a privilege to see you work, because you have so much experience, it seems, and knowing that comes from that, and from the rich journey that you've had on many different levels. That is just, it's pretty incredible to see that. So I just want to put that in there. And speaking about your rich journey,
yes,
you did start as a psychotherapist, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I still
Then
am.
as,
Yes,
sorry?
I still am. I still, I started. I've done. I'm not a massage therapist, a body worker. I am actually just a psychotherapist.
Okay, just a psychotherapist.
That's what I am.
But
That's what I do.
yeah, and you've mentioned how you've kind of progressed also through your experience with your sons.
Mhm,
And you know, I've in the past I have gone into psychotherapy
mhm,
with different degrees of success and kind of experiences.
mhm.
And then definitely discovering the somatic nervous system work was a huge game changer. Um, and just getting the education on board from the with the kind of nervous system lens on board has changed so much for me. And yeah, the understanding why I am the way I am and what is happening and how to be with myself and so on. And could you speak to whether there are similarities or the main differences between the psychotherapeutic, I guess that's the word, approach and nervous system healing approach, like somatic nervous system healing approach, like the modality that you've developed?
Well, when we're looking regulation focused, what we do is regulation focused modality. And in that modality, there's not any pathology. There's not anything like that at all. It's more about let's see if we can bring some regulation on board, and through this regulation, we'll see what happens. When we look at other programs, somatic resilience and regulation is also one of those programs, and that's more of a piece. There's different parts of that that you can apply and put into your work. Where with this work, with transforming touch, we're really sitting in on the side of this nervous system, supporting it and waiting. When I look at others, there's what I hear about others. I haven't traded every other program, but sometimes what I hear is about the work that's required of the client. The client has to do a lot of work and a lot of tracking, oh, when I think about this, this happens. Well, yes, it does. You have a somatic response. And then you lean into the somatic response and you kind of track it and you're looking for some sense of completion. With transforming the experience-based brain, we're not looking for completion. There probably never will be completion if we're waiting for completion. I mean, it's like one thing after another is all ruptured or out of balance. So the biggest comparison is that we're not looking at you, putting you in a box. We don't care about your archetype. You are what you are. We don't care if you're mesomite or pesomite, whatever. We don't care. Because we don't want to block it into where you can't express who you are, where you can't show your wings like a butterfly. Whatever you need to do, have that space to do it in and know that, oh yeah, I can do all these movements and no one thinks I'm crazy. No one's going, oh, you need to go see somebody else because, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do about that. It's like just looking at you and going, oh, okay. All right, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. Here we are, and going with it. So it is different, when we don't have to track. That's probably the big one. There's a lot of tracking and some other modalities that do that. And that's more of left brain activity, and we're right brain and being with. And if you think about a new baby in a cradle, and the mother's sitting in the rock and she's kind of rocking, or the father, or two mothers or two fathers, whatever, but they're sitting there and they're just being with, the baby's asleep, rocking in the cradle, and they're not even holding that baby at that moment, but the connection is so powerful that the baby knows, oh yeah, somebody cares about me. And we try to stay in that caregiving role as transforming touch practitioners. We don't want to We don't jump over into the rescuer, savior, the caretaker role. Caretakers, I think we have to remember the word taker.
Mhm.
Taking something for them, or we're doing something for them that's probably not helping. But caregiving means I just show up. I'm here for you. I support you. I care about you. And I want the best for you, no matter what, even though I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know where somebody is going to grow to or what they're going to be like. I like to imagine the word enough or even though. And thinking about enough and even though, but even though coming into that and realizing we've had enough, and even though all this has happened, there's nothing I can do for it to be different. But there's tons I can do for it not to be on top of me and control me and to drain my life and limit my experiences. And so sometimes we have to just hit enough, don't we?
Mm.
Enough. We need something different.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that image actually ties in beautifully with a question. One of the two questions that people wanted me to ask of you, and one was how to best support an infant and their nervous system development. So you actually started speaking to that already, but is there anything else you might expand on?
Well, I've spent a lot of time with babies, neonate unit babies that have been hospitalized immediately at birth because of lungs, breathing, prematurity, some reason. So I've seen those babies, and I've seen babies who had a parent, everything happened that was supposed to happen when they were being born. And I've seen those babies, and it's interesting work with babies because people think, oh, you have to do all this big stuff, but you really don't. If the baby is with a caring person who's caretaking for them, then we look at them and go, okay, here's this person who's doing everything for this other person. So realize that babies, they're more than just another person. They're a whole being that's growing, but being able to come into that baby and maybe lay your hand just across their belly and just let their belly calm, because that's where we're going to see trauma show up really quick, is in babies' bellies and adult bellies. And bellies do wear out too. So just placing your hand across their umbilicus, and sometimes I cup my hand like this and the umbilicus is under, because sometimes it's still painful, depending how old the baby is. But being able to work with the caretaker to get them regulated, it's kind of the difference between a milkshake and a glass of milk. If we can calm the caretaker, calm them down, whether they're given a bottle or they're given breast, however they're being developed, to where I'm calm enough that it's not like I'm force feeding you. And I think about all the bottles propped up, and in the US, lots of babies had bottles propped up next to them, up on a blanket or a pillow.
There's not even anyone holding or connecting to them.
Not at all. Not at all. And just thinking about that and going, oh, what a disconnect. So, sometimes babies do really well if someone just holds them, walks on the grass, an adult walking on the wet morning grass, holding the baby in that regulation, figuring out before the baby's born or after the baby, when the baby, whatever, but figuring out what you love. Let's imagine for a moment you're a Monet fan. You love the artist Monet. Take the baby to wherever Monet is. What you love is what you teach the baby. And the baby will start to love that too. So finding opportunity, water, not hot water, not cold water, but water with the baby helps to where their skin, they feel a bit of containment. And that's what they're really looking for. We have to remember they came out of these tight places to begin with. They like the tightness. So they're going to want that, even, whether they're wrapped up, bundled, however that comes about, or if they're naked and the caretaker, the caregiver is naked, letting them feel skin to skin, things like that. Letting them hold on to your finger. That grasp reflex is there at birth. Let them hold on to the finger. Let them begin to find safety and regulation through your platform.
So,
Go ahead.
so I think that would be a really good place to maybe drop in a bit of what regulation is and how actually what you mentioned, like what is so important for the infant, the baby, the toddler, and moving on, is actually the caretaker that has a lot of regulation. Because even if we go to see a practitioner, let's say, with a baby for whatever reason, birth trauma or something that happened, but then they go back and even they have, a loving parent and caring, but the parent is constantly buzzing inside. Like when we touch that baby, okay, it's better to touch the baby than not touch the baby. But if there's a lot of that anxiety, I guess we could call it, in the caretaker, and that's how they touch the baby, then that immediately kind of translates into what the baby is feeling, right?
Without a doubt. It's amazing how there's a lot of babies have been vibrating at that level of anxiety, and they will match the anxiety of the caretaker. So if the parent is highly anxious, guess what? That baby's going to be highly anxious too. And even though some people have babies for the purpose of trying to heal themselves, and that's like, oh, don't do that. Please don't bring babies into the earth thinking they're going to heal you. But babies pick up everything. As adults, working with adults now, I can almost figure out where your bed was in relationship to the door by where your pains and how your complaints are. Yeah. So regulation's an interesting word because we think it's just autonomic regulation, but it isn't. It's regulation of the whole systems. When the nervous system regulates, we know the immune system regulates. We know that there's less autoimmune diseases. There's less things going to show up in people's lives. But regulation itself is about expanding my resilience so that I can hold more or process more and let things process through. Being able to find that regulation is what slows us down and allows us to grow. It allows the healing. It allows the pain to come through, the more regulation. Because if we're looking at a window of tolerance and it's about so big, maybe it's
Maybe
an
like
inch.
this
Yeah.
big or like a
We're looking at that. That's a lot of work.
yeah.
And in those tiny window of tolerances where the regulation system is so out of balance, we know that those people get sick. Heart disease, kidney disease, diabetes, cancer, all those things begin to happen in that area. So really being able to, as soon as we can intervene, hopefully it's in the babies. Hopefully the caretaker has already done. It should be a part of in that birthing classes that you're taking, there should be a lot of regulation, but they only talk about the birth.
Yeah.
They're talking about the birth and being paired and teaching you how to breathe through the birth. Well, that breathing has to continue at least through year 3.
Yeah.
So, we have to keep breathing, but it has to be us breathing in our own regulation systems where we're able to be that person who doesn't prop up a bottle. doesn't leave babies in dark rooms down the hall, who, the baby is part of everything instead of being put away, so to speak, like we put away a hand towel. Oftentimes babies are put away. Just put them down here, give them a bottle, prop it up, and they'll go to sleep. And we know that even that kind of nourishment is nourishment, but we know that we get acid reflux, and you don't want a baby with acid reflux. I promise you, that is not an easy baby. So understanding that I need to be a whole lot better with the babies.
Yeah.
Hard job to figure out sometimes.
Yeah, and that it goes beyond, how to fold something or how to carry. It's a lot more about our own somatic regulation work that we do that then can kind of, teach the babies what they actually need without words, right? Because we're not teaching infants through, giving them instructions. It's kind of the nervous system communication gives instructions, right? I actually had this pretty amazing experience during our training just now, where, at the end of it, as I was coming out, I actually had this thought come to me as I was opening my eyes. I was outside of the training building and I was looking at the sky and the clouds and the trees, and the sentence that came is like, there's no need to worry. Like the world is safe. And that's not a message that, somatically I've ever gotten, right?
I hope you have a bumper sticker.
Sorry.
You should have a bumper sticker. I mean, that's a pretty awakening.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big piece. Yeah.
Yeah, it literally felt as if that was after the HPA enhancement. It literally felt as if my system was reorganizing from kind of birth to maybe like 3-year-old or something. It was pretty crazy for, an experience that took maybe 40 minutes on the table, half an hour. And it's pretty magical. So when you also said that HPA, so the hypothalamus pituitary gland adrenal gland kind of axis is what you call like the most spiritual enhancement. Like it definitely was.
Well, it is. And, the HPA, we talk about HPA a lot. The axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal, that's the roadway or the speedway, the superhighway for cortisol, for fear, to get ready to fight, to get ready to run. Whatever you need is coming through, and you're going to get way more than you need. So it's the leftover parts there. But yeah, a lot of folks who have developmental trauma have trouble getting pregnant. They have trouble, sperm counts are low, egg counts may be low, and understanding that HPA also is HP testes and HP ovaries. It's also, our reproductive system is coming right through the same system that sends alerts to dump cortisol into our system. So it's kind of interesting that those two are riding together. Not really, I guess, but it is interesting that they'd be coming out of the same source, different experience, but yeah.
Yeah, I think through the type of modalities that we've mostly been working with so far as a collective to heal, and just kind of the medical system of like, this is a part for this type of a doctor, this is a part for this type of treatment or therapy. It's sometimes really interesting when I start talking to people and telling them that once we start working on this deep level of nervous system regulation, basically every area of our life starts changing. And it kind of sounds, I guess, too good to be true for a lot of people. But really, like whether it's our mental health, emotional health, relational health, finances, how clean our house is, the autoimmune illnesses in our body, like boundary setting. I cannot really think of an area of my life that has not been impacted by doing this type of work. And I think it's sometimes, sometimes difficult to believe.
It is difficult. It is funny that people, it amazes me the number of people that tell me that all of a sudden they go home and clean their house. And we think about cleaning your house as so, it's kind of like, oh, it's a chore and it's muscle memory and it's all of these things. And it's something we might or may not do. I mean, we might have junk piled to the ceiling. But people tell me all the time, I spent all weekend cleaning my house. And I go, oh, here's the key to my house. Go over there and clean for a while. Don't lose that energy now. But I think that's the metaphor of healing,
Yeah.
is cleaning. And if I clean out the kitchen cabinet, it may take me all day.
Mm.
But if I take and I get rid of what I don't need and hang on to what I do with gratitude, it just kind of really shifts my whole life. If I get up in a clean bedroom in the morning, the rest of the house can be a dump. If I have a clean bedroom, it's going to be a better day. But if that dump moves into my bedroom, oh, I've been there, done that. Where you have to squeeze into the bed to find a place to lay because you have so much junk around you. Oh, been
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, and yeah, I think that's one part of it, and another is that you just start seeing things that you didn't see before, because literally as survival stress, lowers in the system, then you kind of start getting out of this tunnel vision. So we actually start seeing things.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed way back, and still I have moments of it come back into clarity, is seeing the edges of things. See where the picture on the wall is just the picture on the wall and not the wall. It's so creepy when that is happening. It's like, wait a minute, I see edges today. When I see edges, I know that I'm extremely grounded.
Yeah.
That it's just kind of trickling along like it's supposed to.
Yeah, so I think that's another part. And for me, what it feels like, and I think Irene Lyon, and I did an interview with her a bit ago. Also, what I think that's the first time I heard about it is, how you give chores to children as they're growing up, obviously age appropriate and with ideally no abuse attached to it, which is not the experience for many of us.
I agree.
But it's basically just a healthy element of taking care of yourself.
Yes.
And I think, again, until we have enough of maybe of this adult part somewhere there and that regulated part, we just don't have that impulse and that drive or that need, but not need from, again, a survival standpoint. I need to clean or else. But it's just like, oh, yeah, I actually do want to put this away. Oh, yeah, that actually makes sense to fold that and put it in the drawer instead of, piling it up on the bed for a week, right?
Right.
And yeah, and again, cleaning is just like, that's just like a tiny of so many different things
Yes.
that can happen.
Well, looking at those chores, that's such a powerful thing. Chores.
Mm-hmm.
Chores teach us responsibility. They teach us about caring about where we live and stay, blah, 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 blah. But they also take us into community.
Yeah.
I'm now part of the
Family system.
structure that's helping this home stick together. I'm part of the glue now.
Yeah.
When I start doing chores, I'm not just feeding off of, I'm now participating, decorating a Christmas tree or a holiday tree or a Hanukkah tree, whatever kind of tree you're decorating, and letting your child do it and seeing it come together when it doesn't match. And understanding that, oh, that's a metaphor for everybody in this house. We all have differences, but let's bring together the community of the family, and that doing those chores make the best team players. They're much more willing to play with instead of being isolated or the champion all by themselves. They're more agreeable, more team oriented.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's crazy because, again, like one could ask, how does, putting your hand in here under someone's brainstem or in here, just like that, under the kidney and adrenals, could have such a huge impact on everything, and yet it does. And so speaking of putting hands on parts of our bodies,
Wherever, yes.
that might have sounded, okay, never mind. I'm going to move on to the question.
Move on to the question.
That might have sounded more loud, loaded than it was supposed to. So
That's
the second question is there any universal touch or kind of exercise or point that one can do by themselves for self-healing?
Well, first of all, the idea of self-healing makes me sad.
Mm-hmm.
The reason it makes me sad, Magda, is that I look at that and I think, that's what I already did. I already did it by myself. So there's a risk involved if we do too much. I really like to have clients get hot water bottles, the old plastic rubber ones they sell at the pharmacy, like your grandmother had, and get those and make those warm, and then to place two of them, one under each kidney region, and just laying in it with pleasant thoughts. If you can meditate, meditate. If you can't, just have pleasant thoughts. If you need to watch TV, watch TV. If you can't tolerate the quiet. But something like hot water bottles, and I always love damp morning grass. And out walking barefoot on morning grass in your yard and being able to see the sunrise and feeling that, walking in nature. All of those things build a sense of resilience. They all build it. They all restock the shelves, so to speak, in our bodies. So go swimming, go for a walk around the block, but really get in touch with your relationship with nature, because we come from nature. We're organic, just like a tree. And so we may have different moving parts and we may have different interior parts, but we're still part of nature. And I think that returning to our roots, no pun intended, going back into our roots and figuring out, oh yeah, I need to hug a tree today. Maybe I need to jump in. Also, I'm a big believer in ice cold morning showers. Really get people's bodies into a bit of a shock for a moment, where the sympathetic nervous system arouses and it begins to heal our sympathetic nervous system just from taking cold showers. It'll begin to lower the inflammation in our bodies and have some pretty miraculous things come about. So doing those things by ourselves, and then when I'm doing healing, doing it together where I'm not alone, not all by myself. But yeah, we are by ourselves, and we do have to have something. But if you find a person to sit with too, that's always great. But
yeah, but that's the at least for now, it's a bit of a challenging moment. Not a challenging moment, a challenging thing for some people, because you haven't worked enough, you haven't trained enough people yet. So chop chop.
I'll get right on that. Thank you.
Yes, you're very welcome. If you want to have a training in Warsaw, we can arrange that.
I would come to Warsaw, yes.
Yeah. But for now, if anyone from Warsaw or in general from Europe wants to learn with you, they don't actually have to go to the States. They can come to Ireland.
They can to Dublin. We will be starting a new round in Dublin next year, 2025. It's already on the website, www.austinattach.com.
I'll put it in the show notes section.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I totally recommend a training. Whether someone's already a practitioner or if maybe they're a parent and they actually want to experience certain things, and especially learn kind of the basic protocol. I think that would be just amazing for any parent to know for themselves, their spouses, and also for the children, and to potentially work with touch like this within the family system. So yeah, I think that would be all. Is there anything else that and there is a book And I am unprepared because it's on my desk, not with me in here, but there is a book that you've co-authored with Kathy Kane,
Yes.
titled Nurturing Resilience. So I'm also
Yes.
going to link that. And
Yes.
it's not a thick book, but it's a pretty dense book. It's really packed. So if a practitioner or just a layperson is looking to learn a bit more about this approach, that is one place that they definitely can go and have a look.
For sure. For
Anything
sure.
else?
There's a book called TEB 123, which
Okay.
is on Amazon for parents. It's a great kids book. They can order it too, and read it at night, and it kind of goes through the protocol.
I guess we
Again,
need a Polish translation, a Polish edition of that book then.
we should. I'll get right on that. I bet we could
Okay.
get that done
So a
pretty.
training in Warsaw and TEB 123 in Polish.
That'll work.
Okay,
That'll.
awesome.
All right.
Well, thank you very much, Steve, for your time and for all that you do. Um,
Thank you.
and
It's
I
my
really
pleasure.
do appreciate so much all that you've developed and all that you share with us. And I'll be seeing you in person in January.
I'm looking forward to it. Actually, I'm buying my ticket today. So
Oh, okay. Maybe that'll motivate me to finally get mine as well. So
I think it's time. So yeah, thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you.
yeah, thank you. Have a great day.